Hey, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Aragon Live on December 4th, 2024. This is Jim Lundy. We've got Ken Delaney, Adam Pease, Betsy Burton, and we're broadcasting live, and we're recording this, so you'll probably see the recording. So this is our weekly podcast talking about tech, and we're going to jump right in. It's AWS reInvent Week. Sometimes great research firms can monitor events remotely. We don't have to go to every event. That's something, Ken and Betsy taught me when I was at Gartner. So we monitor that. We're going to talk about some of the announcements, including their getting into generative with their Nova series, which is finally going to compete with like Copilot and Gemini. But as we said in the prep call before we turned on the record button, I'm kind of from Missouri. Show me. They say, oh, it's part of Bedrock and all that, but I mean, they're a year and a half late. So it would be interesting comments from the team on some of the AWS stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I think this incident response service, maybe we're going to talk about that next, is kind of interesting because, security is baffled a lot of people only because it happened so quickly and the response has been slow. So having a team here to go find out where it is, help you figure out what to do. Almost every week we talk about some tragedy in security. So I thought that was a really good service.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, there's been some discussion around the AWS attacks. They've gone up almost like tenfold. I mean, you're talking hundreds of millions of attacks on the AWS infrastructure, just like Google's getting, just like Microsoft. So I think that, one of the things that's great about Amazon is they say, hey, you know what, let's turn that into a service. But other people, Microsoft and Google have already had security response teams. They already have services that do that. So that's great. I don't know that even though I know people that work in Amazon in security, sometimes they kind of have their security unit as like a separate business unit. It's actually, I think, an LLC, may not be part of actually AWS. But it's also interesting at the event, Andy Jassy, who's the president of Amazon, because they've got a new AWS head that was put in June, but Jassy was at the event because, he's the one that built AWS. But, the share, even though they've got dominant share, Microsoft's catching up, Google's still down, below 10%, but, Google grew the most in cloud share. And second was Microsoft. And a distant third in growth was Amazon. And that's because they're late on AI. And, the pressure driven by OpenAI on the big firms is immense. It is immense. And $4 billion for Anthropic, which is what we talked about last week, that's not enough.
Yeah.
That's not enough that's going into that. And, the entire engineering team at Google is focused on AI now. Like all the focus is on AI, not the same at Microsoft, and definitely not the same at AWS. AWS is having trouble keeping engineers because of the work coming into the office policy.
Oh, that's interesting.
So I did hear that there was an interesting side story that the Chinese companies now are offering engineers in AI triple the salary of what they can get in the US to attract them, because they expect a lot of blockades for trade with China. So the way they're getting the information is to offer huge salary increases to these folks.
For Chinese employees.
No, for American employees to be hired by Chinese companies.
Yeah, there's a war for talent.
And they would work in the United States?
Mm-hmm.
So, Jim, I was going to ask you one question. There was an announcement that happened at AWS regarding SageMaker and Lakehouse. Did you hear about that?
Well, look, we're still unpacking all the announcements.
Yeah.
They did update a lot of their AI. SageMaker is not new.
Mm-hmm.
They did announce a new video tool that we're going to talk about with what Google's actually going to be shipping. So there's a lot of these text-to-video tools, and Amazon introduced one. It can do about 6 seconds. You can create a video about 6 seconds long. I think some of the others can do 10 seconds. Adam's been tracking that more, but let's finish up a bit. So we'll be doing a recap on that. But like I said, show me where some of these people were previewing stuff for the last year, And by the way, OpenAI also has one that somehow got released into the wild. Hugging Face also, which does text to video. Somebody got access to the OpenAI API for text to video and produced a video, which had OpenAI all over because it was preview,
Wow.
and then they pulled it. So Adam, let's talk about the supercomputer that they're using, the Trainium chips that Amazon's touting pretty hard.
Yeah, so AWS is, or Amazon rather, for AWS is building a new supercomputer cluster, and they're calling it the Ultra Cluster, and it's definitely a big promise. It's going to be an AI intended cluster of 20,000 NVIDIA Blackwells, and it's it's kind of going to be, we're going to have to see, because a lot of these AI companies, look at the recent Elon Musk announcements about the XAI cluster that they're building. People are definitely talking big talk about these supercomputers, and I think that a lot of it does come down to like deployment and networking, though, and actually getting these chips actually deployed in a parallel infrastructure that lets you tap their power most efficiently. And so I do think that is one place where AWS is going to shine, because I think a lot of it's possible to throw money and chips at this problem, but a lot of it comes down to having the experience of deploying massive AI models at scale, and nobody but Amazon and Google really has that level of scale experience.
Yeah, that.
By the way, before we leave Amazon, the news today was about Amazon stock price was up, not necessarily because of this, but they said over the weekend, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, whatever, 85% of shoppers went to Amazon to do some of their shopping.
Yeah, well, back to the whole thing about the supercomputer, as Adam was saying, that a lot of the big firms and are trying to basically show that they've got the chops to do these big, AI clusters, but all data centers are going to have to become AI data centers. So that's even Dell has new GPU computers, which are AI computers. So that's not new. One of the things that's also kind of come up, and it's been on podcasts, where some of the big hyperscalers, that Google, Microsoft, Amazon, are trying to, even though they say, we support, anybody can run in our walled garden, but there's been a lot of investment in small AI startups, but there also hasn't been the traction from buyers. And so part of that is that people are tired of buying all these, best of breed tools. But one of the things relative to innovation is, these companies got to get life breathed into them, or they will die. And, blog series To Live and Die in AI, I'm going to be doing another update, but there's some phenomenal tools out there that are all little best of breed things. And so the question is, will private equity buy them up and slap some of them together? Will some of them sell themselves back to where they work? Because a lot of them are, ex-Microsoft, Google, people. But the point is that the big guys are trying to declare victory when there's lots of choices out there, and you don't have to run your AI in their clouds, right? You don't.
But Jim, let me ask you, this feels different from the internet bubble. You might, remember mid-90s when all the internet companies were just appearing out of nowhere, and, lots of teeny little companies, and there's lots of buying up and selling and the rest of it. And we ran into that bubble. This feels different right now. Does it to you?
Well, two things. I think, first of all, the economic scenario for a lot of M&A is not here. Because companies are tightening their belt, so we don't have the economic thing to do the internet bubble. Now, in the next 2 or 3 years, could that happen? There is a lot of money on the sidelines. Companies could certainly spend tons of money to buy up some of these firms. And by the way, there's a lot of companies that aren't tech companies that might consider buying some of this tech.
Yeah,
but it is different. It feels different.
It feels different. Well, the other thing that's interesting is the AI is going to have really different requirements for a startup. I mean, I think it may be harder to start up with AI because of the power and the memory and the requirements that it takes to run AI versus some of these internet startups started on a whim.
Google claims that 90% of the AI startups run in Google, and I believe that.
About that, yeah.
Microsoft's not embracing them, because their stuff's not it's all open AI.
Yeah.
And if you're going to use open AI stuff, you've got to have a walled garden. So But I think the bigger thing, and this is the thing we need to be really honest about, and some VCs are being honest about it. It's a bad economy, right? Bad economy, and it's bad economy overseas too, right? It's even worse in countries like Vietnam. Like it's terrible. So we need economic incentives by government to basically get this thing moving, because there's a lot of these little startups, to Betsy, to your point, they're going to die. So I think that's the bigger thing is, we got to have economic, ways to get these things going, because look, there is a push from enterprises to stop best of breed buying. Right. And we even say that, look, you're if you're going to buy all these best of breed tools, first of all, they're going to, tremendous business interruptions.
Right.
And some of them just don't have the security models.
Yeah.
There's that too. So I don't think we're going to see, there's going to be a bubble, but some of it is going to be, they die.
Yeah.
And what the founders are doing is trying to sell back their company to, like, will you take me back, buy my assets? It's a bad, look, there's been a lot of investment and there's been a lot of startups. You can go and there's hundreds of little AI startups, but they're not taking off.
Yeah.
Part of that is, and Mark Andreessen was actually on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he said that they got vibes that certain entities were only going to support the big cloud companies, and he invests in startups, even though he's A16Z owns part of Facebook. He said, look, our investments were going to die because the government is going to try to throttle them. So basically, that's why, if we want to net it out, that's why a lot of the VCs changed who they were supporting, because they said, we can't have government killing off our VC investments. Now, by the way, that's not been widely publicized, but it just leaked over the weekend. And this is Mark Andreessen, who's here in Silicon Valley, talked about the fact that he was not happy with government policies that they said, we're gonna block you. That's not good. Government's not supposed to be, that involved. Now, by the way, he's also one to talk because, he also gets companies like the CIA to invest in his companies.
Right, exactly.
So
These guys are playing both ends.
Yeah, you live by the sword.
We want to do the innovation, and you have to regulate everybody else, but don't regulate me.
Yeah, M&A
that's right.
is expected to grow. M&A is expected to grow for sure.
So what's going on with Google and VO?
Yeah, so they're doing they announced yesterday that VO, which is a new text to video, is in preview, and then Imagen, which is their top image generator tool, is finally shipping. So Adam, now you're closer to the text to video stuff. What's your take on VO?
It seems good, but I will say that a lot of these tools are kind of batting at like the same level right now, because we've seen, even since Sora at the beginning of this year, a lot of people have caught up to Sora since then, and now Sora is semi-available, and we're seeing that it's about on par with the stuff that Runway can do. Google has kept Imagen behind locked doors for like 2 years almost, and so they're finally letting that out, probably at a time when it's no longer that impressive. Because when they originally had Imagen, I bet you when they originally had this video model, they were more impressive. Imagen especially was state of the art at the time. It waited 2 years to release it, and now it's pretty unimpressive. And so I think it goes to show that Google is kind of notorious for not ever releasing the AI products, and maybe they're trying to move more in this direction. Obviously, we see that with Gemini, but in terms of a lot of their most hyped research, they just never release it for safety reasons. And I think this is going to come back to bite them with stuff like this, because like nobody's too excited about a new text to video model at this point, unless it's, really bringing something new to the table.
Yep. I think that's well said. Betsy, over to you on Nutanix.
Yeah, Nutanix is a company about $1.8 billion in 2023 that's primarily known for hyper-convergence infrastructure. They're actually primarily software-based. I need to spend a little bit more time on them, Jim. But they have announced an AI platform this week, and it's available. And I just thought it was worth sharing that here's another AI platform. We predicted that there was going to be a flurry of AI platforms that were going to enter in the marketplace. And then we're going to see convergence by industry, by data, by, large providers. So this is just one of a bunch of new AI platforms that we think are going to continue to come out. Some of them are going to be really commercially interesting to people. Some of them will be primarily for these companies to use internally. So, this is kind of a new standard infrastructure or architecture.
Well, again, this whole shift to AI PCs and now to AI servers and AI data centers, whether you want to call them, whatever you want to call the data center, but they're going to become AI enabled because we're in an AI world.
Right. Well, we're in two things, Jim. We're in an AI world and we're in a platform world. So,
Yeah.
If you're not developing using platforms, you're losing out. And if you're not developing using AI, you're losing out. So, the AI platform market is going to heat up.
In fact, speaking of that, Ken, let's tee up Intel. What's going on?
Yeah, well, so the value of these particular sessions is we try to give our customers insight into what we think are, structurally wrong in some of these companies that are getting investments that maybe should be challenged. Last week, we talked about a $6.5 billion investment through the CHIPS Act for Intel. Jim, you mentioned it was kind of a bailout, and that probably was an accurate representation, not a strategic investment for new technology. And we talked about the fact that Intel has just had a lot of trouble because of its innate personality of really getting ahead of things and competing on the highest levels of technology in semiconductor manufacturing. They used to be the leader. They fell behind around 14, 15 nanometer process. And now you've got TSMC around 3 nanometers, probably going even lower than that. And the question is, could Intel really match that and get ahead of TSMC? I doubted that last week. We all talked about that a bit. And, I said I wasn't sure Gelsinger was the right person. Well, Gelsinger had run Intel. They brought him back as sort of a nostalgia play that he could rescue the company. Well, he's failed miserably. And that's pretty much what you see in trade journals like the Wall Street Journal, et cetera, saying he just didn't do the job. And so the company has got this investment. There's expectations that they'll bring back U.S. leadership in this technology, but they're rudderless right now. And his question is, do they have anybody kind of Elon Musk-like that can set the goals high enough, change the personality of the company to get them to be a competitor in semiconductors? And I'm kind of on the doubtful side right now. Comments?
Well, first of all, they do have almost just under $8 billion in investment from the government for a new foundry. Their foundry business is bleeding cash, but part of that contract is actually for custom defense chips, not for revolutionizing their foundries. So I think I'm with you, Ken. I don't think they're going to make it competing with 3 nanometer, 2 nanometer, stuff. So, yeah, I think.
So Jim, when you say they're not going to make it, Jim and Ken, when you say they're not going to make it, I mean, do me a favor, think, 3-4 years out. What do you think will happen to them?
Well, I think they'll go niche, like Jim was saying. They'll find specialties. They are certainly big enough to that, and they have a big investment to do something. So I think they'll kind of go niche, but it's going to hurt the U.S. ambitions to bring back chip leadership.
Right.
So I think that's the real thing that the government needs to think about here. How do we get back into chip leadership? We can bring foreign factories on here in U.S. soil, and I suspect many of them will do that, because even some of the foreign companies like Samsung have gotten investments from the CHIPS Act. So we'll have that, and we'll have workers in those companies who may learn something and create new companies. But this is a bit of a hiatus for the U.S. chip manufacturing technology.
Part of my questioning is, so their revenue in 2023 was 54.2 billion, down from 63.1 the previous year. So that doesn't disappear, or are you guys suggesting?
No, I mean, look, just like IBM, they shrink, and they carve out a space. But
Mhm.
I think the bigger thing, it takes years to build, new architectures,
Right,
and they're not there on architecture.
Yeah.
On
you're
chip.
right.
The one thing that's a bit of a puzzle in the pile, we talked about a few weeks ago about IBM committing to Intel for their chips called Gaudi chips. That's their
Right.
chip. And, maybe there's something going on there. IBM's kind of gone sideways a little bit too in this area. So, we'll see. Maybe there's something we don't know about. But the resignation here of Gelsinger says that there's a pretty bad failure within the company, and they knew they need to take a different direction.
Yeah,
This is a losing team right now.
He was the guy that was the CTO, and then he went and ran VMware. I mean, he cleaned up VMware. He didn't kill it at VMware. That wasn't a great exit for VMware. I mean, but that was a company that was in disaster. So I think he at least got some things moving. He got some money, but the business was failing years before he came back.
But I'll come back to what I said last week. Having been the lead analyst for Intel for 3 years when I was at Gartner, and watching them throughout my entire career, the problem with Intel is they keep saying, we know how to do this. No, you don't know how to do this. You need to get some outside influence to really rethink this thing and change the personality of the company. That's what it's going to take. You got the Chinese offering three times current salary. They're going to have a big challenge for talent.
Let's put it this way: we're in a GPU era. Intel doesn't make GPUs. I mean, that's the net.
Yeah.
So I'd say they go specialty until they can, maybe these Gouda things can rectify them, but it's going to take years.
Yeah. Well, what's going to happen to IBM committing to this with now the head of their foundry resigning? So, I mean, if I was IBM, I'd be worried.
Yeah. Yeah, and a classic move to put their CFO in. Give me a break. That they're searching for somebody new. They need an Elon. They need an innovator.
Guys, I'm going to just do this in a public forum. You know what this week calls for? We need a 3-part scenario. Like, what's the future of Intel? And put all this stuff together and look at what those.
Yeah, let's do it.
Like. I mean, that would be really interesting.
All right.
Yeah,
we'll take that one under.
Buying Intel would help.
That's been rumored. Hey, let's go on Gemini PDF, Adam, to podcast.
Yeah, so there's this thing called Notebook LM, which made a lot of news when it came out, which basically takes information and summarizes it into a 15-minute podcast or so, and it's pretty impressive tech. Definitely recommend people try it. And apparently Google is looking to integrate this kind of audio summary feature into Gemini. So I think this is one thing Google is ahead of the curve on, is the audio summarization, in particular, kind of capturing that podcast conversational style voice that people like. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's a very common feature of these AI applications 1 to 2 years from now for us to easily be able to get them to give us kind of audio summaries or explanations at kind of whatever length we feel like for whatever given topic, whether it's something we don't know about or trying to summarize our own data. But I think people really like it, clearly.
So can you explain how this actually works, Adam? It's going to take a PDF and turn it into an audio that you can listen to, with a summary.
Well, I'm not sure how the ultimate tech that they will release will work, but with Notebook LM, kind of the stuff that they're looking at developing further, it's trained on podcast material. And so it generates podcast sounding audio, basically people talking about whatever subject. And so if you tell it, tell me, come up with a podcast, about how to chop wood, like it can generate that podcast. And then if you give it more information, it can get more information in there, and it's pretty good. I would definitely.
It's very good. No, it's very good. And Meta copied it. Meta has their own Notebook LLM, and they copied Google's open source.
So Adam, how close are we to, we're known for visual research. How close are we to be able to create a good portion of that from our research?
Look, I've seen videos. By the way, I've seen videos of a client. One of our firms, Big Tin Can, has a video simulator. You can take one of our videos, you can feed it the text you want, and it will put an avatar up. It looks exactly like Betsy or Adam or Ken, and you barely can tell it's not you talking.
Wow.
You barely can tell. So, and they're getting an innovation award at our event. I mean, they had the CEO, David Keane, speaking, and it's like, that looks like you. I mean, there's that good. So yeah, Ken, I think to answer the question you gave to Adam, we're very close. Zoom rebranding, which by the way, Google Vids will take audio and create a video for you. But it's more about the Google Vid stuff for creating videos is more of an outline. It's an outline generator, and it can do the audio. It can't really do the video. Okay, Zoom rebranding. We'll wrap up with Zoom. Zoom video communications is now just Zoom communications. They took the video out because the demand for video is not like it used to be, even though it's become kind of commodity. So Zoom is trying to compete in the broader workspace. So they have Zoom Workplace, which has, you know, docs, calendar, chat. So they're really trying to be more like Microsoft and Google. And note, a lot of their new executives came from Microsoft. So why not? So, I mean, you know, we'll see. I mean, that's not like huge news. Obviously, today we talked a lot about Amazon and, you know, basically everything lining up for the AI wars, right? We're in the AI innovation wars, and there's going to be winners and losers. And we talked a lot about today about there's a lot of small firms that may be losers if people don't start buying the products. So
you know, Jim, on the Zoom rebranding, I wonder if they did this too late. You know, excuse me, in the middle of the pandemic, they were like, you know, the darling everybody was paying attention to. And I almost feel like they misstepped in an opportunity to do this, you know, a couple of years ago when they were still, you know, darlings after the pandemic.
I agree with you. I don't disagree, but like I said, I don't know that it really is material. I don't know that it's that material. But because I think they were rebranding and diversifying years ago. They just didn't change their name. So I think they did start a couple years ago to rebrand or diversify. And you know, they've got a contact center now, but mainly people still buy them for video meetings.
Yeah, right, absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, well, look, I mean, a great discussion today. This is Aragon Live. This has been recorded. It will be out on our Aragon Insight Network, and parts of this may show up on our YouTube channel. So we got Aragon Transform next week. If you haven't signed up, we've got some great panels and discussions next Tuesday, the 10th. And team, looking forward to that. And thank you all for great analysis today.
Good.
Thank you.